I've helped over 150 people change careers and land their first job as software engineers. I've started 2 different code schools in 2 countries and a meetup group full of over 1,300 people who are learning to code. Now, I don't tell you all this to be impressed with me, but to tell you that I know what it means and what the secret is to actually landing your first job as a software engineer. You obviously have to learn to code, but there is no magic pill or special button that you can press to get you there quickly. The secret is you have to have your eyes on the screen and your fingers on the keyboard. There is nothing else that's going to get you a job as a software engineer other than coding, which means that the most important skill that you can learn in this process is how to actually focus. Focusing for new learners is especially difficult because learning to code is really hard. And when things are hard, we become easily distracted, especially in this world where there are so many ways to become distracted when we're at our computers. It's not only distractions that make focusing on learning to code difficult, but it's our lack of time. We are so busy. Whether you have kids and a job and other kinds of responsibilities, it can seem nearly impossible to invest the time necessary to actually making a dent in learning to code and hopefully transitioning jobs to becoming a software engineer. You're about to see a webinar I did recently designed to help you carve out buckets of time and to stay focused in those buckets.
We're gonna dive into this. Again, if I'll try and stop as I go if you have questions or want clarification. My hope is that there's stuff here that you haven't heard before, or that maybe you haven't thought about this topic in these terms. When I say focus, here's the reason why I love this topic so much. The secret to learning to code and becoming a software engineer isn't to be good at math or to know the right programming language, but it's the ability to focus for long periods of time. I mean, at the end of the day, I believe that if you want to become a software engineer, if you want to do this, you can. You don't need a special kind of background. You don't need a degree. I've seen this with my experience. You don't have to be mathematically minded. I mean, the highest math course I took in college was literally called college math. And it was all about the theory of why you should do math, and math is good and you can do finance stuff with it. So I'm not a math guy personally, but it's the ability to set and focus, which, as you probably know from your own experience and living in the world we live in now, it's becoming increasingly difficult to sit for long periods of time and focus, especially on difficult concepts like coding. So we're going to talk about how we can kind of beat this system of our brains and the world that we live in which it becomes super hard to actually focus on anything. To give you some more context, I love, there's this book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. He's actually a computer science professor, and he writes all these really interesting books on productivity and work. And his whole theme here, and I think it's something that we can kind of latch onto, is in the economy we live in, which is a knowledge economy, right? You as a knowledge worker have to produce something based off of your brain, whether you're in finance or you're coding in technology, sales, whatever it is, it's your own brain, right? And so if that's the reality, that our greatest asset is our ability to think and use our brain, then our biggest hurdle is figuring out how to focus. And nothing is more true than that for our own sake whenever we're on this journey of learning to code. Now, let me kind of set that up as well for you. I'm not sure who you are. Hopefully I'll hear a little bit about that in a little bit. I'm assuming that you're thinking about learning to code, or you are learning to code, or you've been doing it for some time. Perhaps even you have the aspiration to change jobs completely, right? To go take online courses, whatever it is you want to do to figure that out, and to eventually change careers. Obviously, software engineering is an incredible field to be in, especially right now. All of our grads, for the longest time, we had no one that had been laid off. One guy got laid off, and 2 weeks later, he got a better job. So we're seeing software engineering still steadily increasing as a career field, even in the midst of a pandemic. So there's no better time to get into it. So that being said, let's start defining some terms, right? Let's talk about what it, by the way, I've got my wine. I mean, it's okay, right? We're at my home. You can have wine too. Let's talk about what it means to actually focus, or what focus actually is as a definition. So I'm going to describe it like this, because I think if you can remember this kind of one-liner, or I guess you could say formula, if you will, I think it will help you whenever you're experiencing times whenever it's difficult to focus, right? And I'm going to get real practical here. When I say focus, it could be this very ambiguous thing, or I'm talking about focusing and learning to code. We'll get real practical and exactly what this looks like, feels like, my own experiences, some kind of case studies here. So I describe focus as intention minus distraction equals focus, right? And I'm going to tell you a little bit some of the resources I've pulled from here to kind of arrive at this. But focus just can't be that you're doing something that you don't like to do, right? Sometimes people are if you're browsing Facebook, for example, right? That's probably the quintessential example of being distracted. You are scrolling the news feed. You're just praying to God that the next thing that pops up in the news feed is just so incredible that it actually fills your soul a little bit. Now, I know that we're not actually thinking that, but in a lot of ways, whenever we're scrolling on news feed like that, that's really what we're doing. And you might be thinking to yourself that there's no way that is what focus is, but it depends on what your intention is, right? If you said, hey, for these 15 minutes, I'm blocking out this time to aimlessly scroll through Facebook, then that might be what focusing looks like for you, right? Obviously, if you are trying to figure out how to balance your budget, then that's what focus is for you right then. So intention, we have to define what our intention is ahead of time, or else we'll always feel like we're not meeting the mark and that we're distracted. So until you define what intention is, you can't really define what distraction is, right? And so distraction obviously is anything that's not what you're intending to do right now. Now, obviously, what I'm talking about here can be applied to literally anything in your life that you want to focus on, not just coding, but there's going to be a few things that are specific to us as new developers that we want to keep in mind when we move forward. So we'll come back to this more in a little bit. Intention minus distraction equals focus. If you can intend to do something and you can prevent yourself from being distracted by other things, then you've achieved focus, right? And that will change the world, quite literally. Nothing that has ever been done that's important in the world hasn't been done due to a few minutes at a time of really great focus, right? I think one of the points I'm going to make coming up, we're going to look at how we organize our time buckets in our life. Big 10-year goals are accomplished 5, 10, 25 minutes at a time. So if you can't master and win these next 25 minutes of focus, you're not going to reach your 10-year goals, whatever those things might be. So this is super important for your entire life, not just coding, right? All right. So why is it nearly impossible, though, to focus, right? If you're like me, and maybe you're not, my wife, for example, she is just naturally good at focusing. I think she hasn't been so poisoned by the world of social media as I have, but she can sit down and read a book for 3 hours. I'm like, all right, I've read for 7 minutes. I finished a chapter. Time to celebrate with like a 25-minute YouTube video and a snack. Okay, but it's nearly impossible to focus for a couple of reasons. Now, there's a lot of reasons, but the two things that we're going to really zoom in on and try to figure out some practical solutions here is, one, we lack space and time, right? So if you think about yourself right now, I'm sure you're busy, right? Even if you're, have a different life stage than me. I've got 3 kids. My wife's in grad school. She's doing the homeschool thing. Also, I'm working. That's crazy busy. Every person, I'm sure, has a similar example of how they're crazy busy. So it's just reality, right? You lack space and time to focus on the things that are important to you. So right now, if your goal is to learn to code, and I'm going to kind of say this a little bit more later, but I'd say 20 hours a week coding, right? That might seem so incredibly impossible to you right now because you lack space and time. So we're going to have to figure out, how do we build a space, right? Whether it be in your house or at a kitchen table or something like that. And how do we get time? So we're gonna look at the strategies of how we do that. And then 2, we're easily distractible, right? Especially when focusing takes work. Now, some things you might do and you might feel that I can do this all day long. And you probably name any of your passions or your hobbies, and you don't have a hard time focusing on those things, right? Because normally if it's a passion or if it's a hobby of yours, if it's something you like it because you're good at it, right? And that's just naturally. We like the things that we're good at, right? If you tell me, yeah, I'm an avid runner, I've done several marathons. I'm not, by the way, but I'm saying if you told me this, I'm an avid runner. I've done several marathons, etc. And I were to say, are you good at running? Now, you might use some false humility and tell me that you're not good at running, but my bet is that you are good at running. And if you were not good at running, you would not like it. Of course, like anything, there's this period of time in which you have to start it and you have to get good at it in order to actually enjoy it. And then once it's enjoyable, you're less easily distracted from it. So the example of running, I would say that there is some point in time in which you started to run and there were aspects of it that you did enjoy, right? And that's why you kept with it, but you didn't enjoy running a marathon the first time you put running shoes on, right? So same kind of things is true with coding, because coding is so difficult, because it takes so much energy from your brain and work, and it takes so much positive self-talk, right? Because all the things start flowing around in your mind, all the lies of, I'm not good enough, I don't have a math brain, I'm never going to be able to do this, I'm too old to start learning, whatever that is. It takes work to really hone in and focus. So we're easily distractible. So again, these two things, we want to figure out space, time, and tension, and we want to remove distractions. So we'll now get on to talking about how we do this. All right, so we're going to have 4 steps. Hopefully this is easy, and hopefully these are new things that you haven't thought of before. One, we're going to talk about what it looks like to actually make a commitment, right? I mean, obviously, we know the power of accountability. If you say you're going to do something, it makes it much more likely that you're going to do it because you've either written it down or someone is going to hold your feet to it. So we're going to talk about what it looks like to make a commitment to coding. 2, we're going to create a coding first schedule. Now, it could not get more practical than this part. We're literally going to say, what does your week look like? And we're going to break it down, and we're going to think about how we can make sure that coding comes first. And I sent an email out a few days ago, the example again of my wife, who she's in grad school right now, right? And so she has a school first schedule, whereas she has to do grad school. Doesn't mean it's the first thing she does every day. In fact, it's probably the 8th thing she's doing. In fact, she's off somewhere else in the house doing it right now while she drinks her glass of wine. But anyway, so we're going to look at what that looks like. 3, make coding a habit with rituals. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this idea of having rituals. I don't mean something, weird where you drink a potion and you say a spell. By ritual, I mean something that you do habitually repeated every single day. So we're going to talk about what rituals look like and how you can make coding just a natural part of your weekly rhythm with these rituals, so that you just spend less of your brain energy trying to figure out, okay, do I have my computer? Do I have a Wi-Fi connection? Do I have power? Am I in the right spot? Do I have time right now? What is it that I'm going to work on? We want to figure all this stuff out ahead of time, so that when you have the time in your schedule, bam, you're diving right into whatever it is you're learning right now when it comes to coding. And then 4, we're going to look at strategies for staying focused, right? So whenever you set your schedule up, you have the time, you're all prepared. How do you keep yourself from giving up, in the middle of things? And there's some really practical stuff that we're going to look at. So I've said practical about 30 times, but let's keep it practical. All right. So step 1, making a commitment. Yes, like a marriage. So this idea of hoping versus planning, right? I hope to become a software engineer this year. Don't just hope for it. Actually make a plan to do it. That's probably seems a little bit obvious, but if you don't have like something written down, I mean, even if it's just like a piece of paper, if it's a note on your computer with your plan, no matter how inaccurate it is, right? Your plan is not going to work, by the way. The first one, at least, you're going to have to learn as you start down the path of the plan. But if you don't have a plan for how you are going to achieve whatever goal that you have related to coding, then you're hopeless, right? What's the saying? Fail to plan and plan to fail, right? Or you could put it the other way around as well. So we want to actually have some kind of written down plan. Now, the reality is, as you go forward, you're going to learn that parts of that plan are inaccurate, and you're going to have to adjust it and make up for it, right? Because you can't predict the future, but you can't steer a ship that's not moving. Man, all kinds of those little zinger sayings, right? Get accountable. I said this a minute ago, but by getting accountable, I mean, slideshow fail. But get accountable, I mean, This could look a number of ways. You could do, I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, like 100 days of code, right? So it's like a hashtag you can tweet. So get accountable to social media. Get accountable to a friend, start a blog, whatever it takes for you to make sure that someone else is in your corner helping you do this, and that you're not alone in these goals, because otherwise you're gonna fizzle out, obviously. Create SMART goals. We'll talk about these more later, but SMART is an acronym, and we'll talk about it more in a bit what it is. But the idea is having something that's very specific and measurable, right? Like, for example, a not SMART goal would be, I'm going to get fit this year. That could mean a number of things. But if I say, well, I'm going to lose 20 pounds by February, right? That's very specific and it's measurable. And I can say, yes, I either did do it or I didn't do it. And maybe I get to January and I'm like, well, I've only lost 3 pounds. Okay, I'm going to readjust my goal a little bit. So I don't quit, right? But I'm going to readjust my goal so that I can keep going. And then plan to sacrifice, right? If this is a top priority in your life and you know that learning to code and landing a job is going to help you have more money, have more time, be more flexible, secure employment. I mean, honestly, all the things that would make your life happy and you'd enjoy the job and have opportunities for growth, then the sacrifice is going to be worth it, right? So plan to sacrifice your time, which is the most valuable resource you have because you can't get it back. Plan to sacrifice your money some way or another. You are either going to not get money that you could get because of this. You're either going to quit a job to learn more efficiently, something. It's going to cost you. There's no such thing as learning for free. Relationships, perhaps, depending. I'll tell you in a little bit. I'm sure someone's going to ask me the question about, how do you go from complete beginner on your own and teach yourself how to code? And I'm really sorry to probably burst your bubble here, but I've only met 2 people, in all of my time of running code schools who have completely taught themselves from scratch how to code and got a job by themselves without any other help or program or something. And so these 2 people both were single and had very few relationships happening in this season of their life. So that's something that you might have to sacrifice for a little bit, but hopefully not. And comfort, right? You're going to be out of your comfort zone all the time, but it's going to be worth it in the end. And by the way, to my comments on only a couple people actually making it, I think regardless of what your trajectory is going to be, your pathway to actually learning to code and getting a job, I think you have to start with this self-teach route, right? There's some things that you've got to figure out on your own in the beginning to prove to yourself that this is where you want to be. All right, we won't go there yet. So 1, you've made a commitment. 2, now this is where we get really practical. Got to stop saying that word, but we get really practical here. Create a coding first schedule. So now we're going to dig into your life. We're going to look around all the nooks and crannies of how you spend your time, and we're going to try and blow it up a little bit in a good way. All right, so let's dive in. Coding first schedule. Okay, another one of these little pithy sayings. I don't know if you've heard this, if you've read any like these finance books. I've done some research on it. I'm pretty bad at that kind of stuff, but a lot of times you hear that whatever your income is minus expenses is your savings, right? Obviously, that's the way that you probably normally treat your finances. Is this is the money I get every month. This is what I spend it on. Whatever's left over, I'll save or give or do something with it, right? And a lot of the financial gurus say, well, let's flip that over on its head. Let's say you have your income and the first thing you do is, quote, pay yourself. You might have heard that kind of saying before, where you put your money into savings and then whatever's left over are your expenses, right? And so what this means is you literally have to rebuild your entire lifestyle based off of how much money you want to save, right? So if you have a certain savings goal, it might dictate that you don't live in that house and that you buy an old beater for cash and don't have a car payment, things like that. There is sacrifice obviously involved. So the same thing is going to be true for us when it comes to learning to code. If this is a priority for you, then you've got to flip your schedule on its head a little bit. So here's some things I'm going to talk about. So normally you got your schedule. By schedule, I mean all the time that you have the whole week. blank, right? If you didn't have a job, if you could quit, if you didn't have responsibilities, Monday through Friday, or really Monday through Sunday, or Sunday through Monday, depending on where you want to start, that's your schedule, right? I think you start filling in with all of your commitments, right? So whatever this is, taking the kids to school or homeschooling them right now, whether this is going to work, going to the store, paying your bills, whatever it is you have to do, your commitments, and whatever's left over is the time that you have to code. And again, we're going to flip that, right? We want to say that, all right, here's our schedule. The first things that we're going to schedule in here is the time that we want to code. So how many hours is that a week? Let's schedule it in. And whatever's left over, we'll build our commitments around it. Now, we're going to be a little bit more realistic than that, because obviously you really can't just tell your boss, hey, actually, I have to code today, so I'm not coming in. And you can't tell your kids, hey, there's no school today because I'm going to be coding. So we're going to look at what it looks like to actually do this. So here we go. The first thing that we're going to talk about are terms. All right, so schedule. That's a generic term, but I'm going to assume that by schedule, we're going to be talking about the total number of hours you get each week. Should be the same for all of us, 168-ish hours a week, right? And that's the cool thing, by the way, is all of us have the same number of hours a week, right? Mark Cuban or Bill Gates might have a lot more money than us, but they don't have more time than us. So we all have the same number of time every month to work with, or every week here to work with in our schedule. Our fixed commitments. All right, so these are going to be those things that you cannot sacrifice, right? Or your life would fall apart. Your job, your kids, your family, whatever it is, right? You cannot sacrifice these weekly commitments. This is where we're going to be realistic and say that, no, you don't have to quit your job to learn how to code. Although that's something that I've helped a lot of people do before too. And you can if you want. And then third here are the variable commitments. Now, if we kind of again, use the analogy of our finances, this is our free spending. This is our eating out budget, right? This is our clothes. This is our Amazon Prime Week, whatever budget. So these are variable commitments. These are things that you can sacrifice. Hanging out with friends, self-care. Now, we want to make sure we have a balance of self-care type things in our schedule, obviously, or you'll burn out. And then coding time, of course, is the time that you spend learning to code. Okay, so we've got all these things set up. We've got a blank schedule. Let's look at it and start to fill it in. So I usually start off with one, figuring out what your goal is, right? So again, if we're using this analogy for finances, what's your savings goal per month? In this case, what is your weekly coding time commitment? We're going to say 18 to 20 hours. That is meaty. That's beefy, right? To have that much time every week where you're spending learning to code. You're going to learn a lot really fast, and it's going to be awesome. All right, 2. Next, we're going to add in our fixed commitments. We're actually going to give an example of this on a schedule, like a little, what do you call this thing? Spreadsheets? Yep, spreadsheet. So see if you can trim, right, your fixed commitments. Is there anything that you can do without, right? You maybe you normally go to knitting club. I don't know what kind of things people do. I don't do anything other than hang out with my kids. So let's say you're going to knitting club. Well, maybe for this season you're not doing knitting club anymore. 3, we're going to fill in with variable commitments. So after we have the time that we're coding, and then that we've got the time set aside in our schedule for the things that we have to do, then whatever's left over, we're going to be free with, right? So this is hanging out with friends and that kind of stuff. Okay. So our example, 18 hours a week. This is what we're pulling out with our coding time. So this is going to be our goal. And this is the blank schedule. I don't know if you can see it real well. It might be difficult. Don't worry about the small text, depending on your screen resolution, et cetera. You might not be able to see it. But essentially what I've got here is I've got columns that are Monday through Sunday. I've kind of got Saturday and Sunday a little bit grayed out here because those are just weekend times. Maybe you have a job where you work on the weekends, but this is kind of based off what I would do. And then on the left-hand side, you see we've got time. So we've got 30-minute increments from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Now, yours might be different. You got to ask yourself, are you a night owl or you're a morning person? I've got kids, so I'm a morning person. So from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., that gives me about 7 hours to sleep if I'm active from 5 to 10, and I can actually go to bed on time. So that's a healthy number of hours to sleep. And then you'll see over here that I've also got these themes. We're not going to really go over those right now, but for themes, maybe in the mornings, it's all about you. During the day, it's about work. And the evening, it's about relationships. I think it's helpful to kind of have these themes depending. Okay, so this is our blank schedule. So remember, the first thing that we are going to add in here are our fixed commitments. So here's me, right? Fixed commitments are from 8 to 5:30, Monday through Friday. I've got work, right? Just a big old dark gray work. And the mornings from 7 to 8, I got getting kids ready, right? Help my kids get ready for the day, get them dressed, breakfast, that kind of thing. And then when I get home from work, looks like it's from 5:30 to 7 here, got family time, right? Which means we're doing dinner, bath, bedtime, all that kind of thing. So that's sort of me. And you could kind of, see this as a fairly generic example for anybody who works a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Or in this case, I guess 8 to 5. Okay. So now we're going to add in our coding time, right? So we want to get 18 hours in. So here's what I've done. You might just start to think that I'm crazy, and this might feel like your life is going to suck, but bear with me here. So assuming that the alarm can go off at 5 a.m. and you can get out of bed. And now I'm going to talk about how you can get out of bed here in a little bit in a way that's going to feel like a joy. So for example, for me, when I get out of bed in the morning, the coffee's already made. My sweatshirt that I like to, be in the morning because I'm cold is already set out. My desk is already set up. I've got my headphones right there. I've got the music I want to listen to. So the first thing I do is I get out of bed and I'm sipping a cup of coffee in my favorite sweatshirt, listening to my favorite music, and it's peaceful, right? So that's what you want to get up to. So we'll talk about preparing ourselves in a little bit with these rituals to make sure that always happens. Otherwise, no one wants to get out of bed whenever it's 5 a.m. Your breath stinks. You can't find a toothbrush. Oh God, you're not going to make coffee because you can't grind the bean because you're going to wake up everyone in the house. Anyways, we'll get there. So okay. So on Tuesday, Thursday mornings, we're waking up at 5 a.m. We're coding for 2 hours, right? Best time to code because everyone's asleep. Again, I'm a morning person, so I'm in bed by 10. I even have about an hour before I get done coding Monday through Thursday to also actually, kind of wind down with my wife or whatever. And then Saturday, Sunday, for me, this would be like nap time, right? So the kids are taking a nap or having quiet time, the older ones are. So I can just get a couple hours of coding in. And then Sunday night, right? I don't know about you, but in my house, I feel like we only get 1.5 days of the weekend because Sunday afternoon comes around and everyone just feels the blues because it's pretty much Sunday afternoon is code for preparing for Monday. So I don't think I'll have any problem coding on Sunday night. And then Monday through Thursday evening, you're coding too. So you got Friday night, Saturday, pretty much the whole weekend to do something else besides coding. So that's one option. We were able to figure out how to get that time in there. Now, we can fill in with some things here, right? So maybe I want extra sleep, literally Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's a lot of sleep, to be honest. If you're going to bed at 10 and you're getting up at 7 on 5 days a week, that's a ton of sleep. I got downtime every evening. I've got date night in here on Friday night, and I've got tons of margin in here on Saturday and Sunday. Again, this is like with a super busy full-time job, lots of family commitments, you're able to do this. Another option here is to just free up the weekend altogether. Let's say like a boss, you're going to get up every morning and code. And then every evening, you're going to do a couple hours before bed, except for Friday nights. Then you have this huge weekend to do whatever you want because you don't need an extra sleep anyways. You're already sleeping 7 hours a night as it is. So I'd say our totals here were we did about 60 hours of fixed commitments between kind of getting the kids ready and working. Our coding time was 18 hours a week. Our variable commitments were about 41 hours a week, so of other things that we could do. And required sleep is 49 hours a week. So we are actually getting a ton of sleep in there. Now, you could be crazy and readjust this any way that you want, depending on your own lifestyle. Have you, I'm curious if you've ever heard of, again, I've been listening to these finance podcasts, but there's this movement called FIRE. It stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And the idea is people save so much money that they can essentially retire when they're young because they have so much money saved up. And I always laugh because the examples are like two people in their early 30s no kids, and they both have like 6-figure incomes. I'm like, yeah, you can retire whenever you want. You can live in, a closet, ride your bike to work and save, hundreds of thousands of dollars, between a few years. So all I have to say, depending on your personal situation, maybe you don't actually have 60 hours of fixed commitments. Maybe you have many less. Maybe you have many more, and it means you don't get to have as many variable commitments. Maybe you want to say, I don't want to do 20 hours. By the way, I'm getting 20 hours because I say that you should probably have about 1,000 hours of coding experience before you're ready to start applying for jobs. Now that's a very random number because your 20 hours might not be that quality, right? So anyways, this is just an idea of how you can get your coding first schedule together. So before I move on, I guess I'll take some time. Does anyone want to pop in with a question about that schedule? I mean, by the way, I want to be straightforward and say, like, I don't do this right now with coding, but I do this right now with work, right? I am getting up every morning to do something, some kind of self, I'm like reading and journaling, and then I'm doing some work. And then at least a couple of nights a week, I am doing some work. So this isn't made up. And there was a time where I did do this with coding or with working. But yeah, anyone have any questions about this? I mean, does this seem outlandish? Does it seem doable? What keeps you from committing to something like this?
I have a question. So I find that, like, when I first initially start out with something like this, I can keep to it for a while, but then, like, a vacation will happen or a holiday or something that like throws off the groove of the schedule. So do you have recommendations for like maintaining this long term, even with like brief interruptions to the schedule?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think there's gonna be two things here I think that are important that we'll talk about yet in this. One is gonna be this idea of rituals. Because I think the more energy you have to put in readjusting yourself back to the schedule, the harder it is to commit to it. And then I think two is this kind of regular assessment, right? So I'm going to talk about how you should assess annually, quarterly, weekly, and daily, kind of like measuring and reviewing your week, right? So for me, if I have these big goals and I just like jump off the wagon, as long as I have like a commitment to like a weekly review, I can say, oh man, this was a bad week. And after a few weeks, I can say, oh, I've had 3 of these bad weeks in a row. I really have to go back and reassess, like, Aaron, do you actually even want to do this or not? So yeah, that's what, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know if you want to say any other ideas other than that. All right, let's keep on keeping on. I hope the answer comes more clear too when we talk about some of these other things, because I feel what you're talking about for sure. And I actually experienced that in August. We went on like a beach vacation, and I think because of the things I set in place, it was actually pretty easy to get right back into things. All right, so we made a commitment, we created our schedule. Now we're going to talk about rituals and how to make a habit of coding, where it's something you just kind of do without thinking about it. All right, let's imagine this. Again, we're kind of in the world of whatever this person is that we made up who gets up at 5 to code. Your alarm goes off at 5, but you slept 7+ hours, right? So you actually feel pretty good because you slept. Your coffee has already been made for you. Your slippers are right by your bed if you wear slippers. I'm weird. I have a kind of OCD about like my feet. I just have to have socks on in my house. Your headphones are out and your playlist is ready. I listen to some nice instrumental music in the morning. Got my little AirPods. I got to make sure they're charged, right? Your computer's open, charging, and set up at your favorite sitting spot. All the necessary applications, whether it's VS Code, whatever you're using, they're up there, they're ready to go. And for the next 2 hours, you know exactly what you're working on, right? If you could do that, how much easier would it be to psych yourself up to actually getting up and start coding, or after you put the kids down, or whatever it is that you're doing? How much easier would it be to start coding if you had that all set up? Because that's where rituals come into play. So I love this quote. It's from The Art of War. I think it's kind of funny, but every battle is won or lost before it's ever fought, right? Kind of like the saying, plan to fail or fail to plan, which is this idea that if you don't start your day out right, or if you don't start this session of focus out correctly, you're going to not win anyways. It's almost hopeless. So I have two different rituals. And by ritual, I mean, I have a note on my phone that I look at that tells me every evening before bed, I just follow these steps. It's almost like a recipe, just like a little to-do list that says you do these same things every night before bed. And in the morning, I have the same thing. I have a little note, and it tells me exactly what to do every night after I wake up, or every morning after I wake up. So here's mine. I'm just going to read it out, and I'll talk about what the specific things are I want you to pull from this. So after I put the kids to bed, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but this is a trigger, right? So every night, no matter what, I put my kids to bed, right? They're there to remind me that they should be in bed, and I look forward to that time. I love them. I look forward to the time when I put them to bed. So every night I put them to bed. So that's a trigger for me. I don't have to, conjure up willpower. I don't have to be disciplined. That's going to happen. So as soon as I put my kids to bed, that kind of triggers for me this chain of events. So the next thing I do is I prepare my coffee, right? So I have a really cheap, I think it's like $23. I'm a coffee nerd, so I sacrifice my really great pour over in the morning for whatever the drip coffee thing is. It has a little timer, so it will brew for me before I even get up. So I set my lunch out for the next day. I set out my socks and sweatshirt in my office. We have like this guest bedroom that has desks, right? That's where I do all my work at home. I organize my office with my Bible, because I'm going to do a little bit of reading when I wake up in the morning. I put my running clothes on the guest bedroom bed with running shoes in case I want to go for a run in the morning. Put my bag and computer in the office, my headphones and the charger in the kitchen. Before I go to sleep, I set my alarm for 5 a.m. So this is the next trigger, right? Every night I go to bed. So I make sure that I look at my thing before I go to bed, and it says set my alarm for 5 a.m. So those are my rituals. That might sound like incredibly boring and nothing that's very inspiring or motivating, but I can't tell you how aggravating it is whenever my alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking to myself, God, this bed feels so good and it's warm, and I do not want to get out of this bed and go into that world in which I have to make my own coffee. So it's such a huge encouragement when all these things are done for me and it's set up and ready. And so I think the same thing would be true for you too. If you had this ability to just step into this environment, whatever that looks like for you, in which your computer's set up, like you are ready to code. You're not having to spend those calories, that brain power, the energy, and getting everything prepared. In fact, I don't even have to think about what this is, because there's literally a note on my phone that tells me exactly what it is I need to do in order to get set up. Right? I don't have to memorize any of this stuff. Now, eventually I memorize it because you do it every day. But anyway, so that's the evening ritual. And the morning is similar, right? Obviously, my alarm goes off at 5 a.m. That's my trigger for getting started in this ritual. So I get out of bed. Sometimes I snooze it. I confess that. I snooze. But I get out of bed. I go to the kitchen. I start the coffee. Now, this is before I bought my little automatic thingy. So you just press the little button, because I already had my greens on my beans ground. After I start the coffee, I walk in my office to pee. Guys, this is real. This is straight up my note. I copy pasted it, so I didn't change it for anybody. Yes, I always have to use the bathroom when I get up. So I walk into the office. There's a bathroom in there, so I pee. After I pee, I weigh myself, insert info into MyFitnessPal. I just want to know what kind of progress I'm making. After I weigh myself, I put on my PJ pants. I have these comfy pants that I put on that are just so much more comfortable than whatever I would sleep in. Socks and a sweatshirt, right? Because I'm cold in the mornings. Gosh, this is feeling revealing. I feel vulnerable right now. After I put on my clothes, I'll get my coffee and my headphones. I get my Bible. I read one chapter. I set a 5-minute timer. I pray for my family. After that, I have a writing system. So instead of coding, I'm doing some writing every week. After I write one sentence, right, this just gets me started on a habit. I can write more if I want. I read a little bit of a nonfiction book. Then I read through a life plan that I have. I'll tell you a little bit about life plans in a little bit. And then I put on my shoes, workout clothes, and headphones, and I leave for a 2-mile run, right? So I kind of have from 5 to 7 before the kids get up. And that enables me to do all of these things. And then at 6:30, if I go for a run, then I'm back by 7. And when the kids wake up, instead of me being groggy and frustrated, I've just had a whole day of getting the most important stuff done that I would want to get done. And I've gone for a run. So I'm feeling great at that point when this happens. All right. So we could obviously rearrange this for coding. And I'm only giving you this as an actual example to say, like, I am really doing this. I'm not just making some stuff up and telling you what you should do. And by the way, I'm probably a 95% success rate for how often this actually happens for me. And I do this Monday through Saturday. So I don't do it on Sundays. My wife and I kind of switch off sleeping in, but and I feel great. I don't feel like it's destroying me. So what are the principles though here for how you can actually utilize this and what does it do for you? One, if you're like me, oh no, typo. Okay. My morning defines my day, right? If you wake up in a crappy mood and you are just, begrudging the day ahead of you, obviously it's going to make the whole day pretty crappy. Rituals, as you saw here, they're triggered by small events that set off a chain. So for me, if I put my kids to bed, that triggers a chain of events that is going to make for a really great tomorrow, right? So it goes all the way to the evening ritual, all the way to the morning ritual. Now, I don't have to remember anything. All I have to do is say, oh yeah, putting my kids down. What do I do after I put my kids down? Check my note, and I'm good to go. Each bullet is small and attainable, right? So even saw in there, like even if I wanted to write, right? So I'm writing blogs and different kind of articles. I just write one sentence. As long as I write one sentence, I'm good to keep moving. In coding, this might mean you write one line of code, right? As long as you do that, you can check it off for the day. Now, hopefully you'll do more and you'll be so in the habit of coding every day that it'll be a little bit difficult to not do more. My rituals are time tested and adjusted accordingly, right? Just like the plan that you have in the beginning of this is how I will become a software engineer. This is how I will learn to code. I'm adjusting it, right? As I go. I've been doing this for the last 5 years. And stuff has gone on the rituals and off. And sometimes I'm running, sometimes I'm not, sometimes I'm reading this, sometimes I'm not, sometimes I'm working, sometimes I'm not. So it just depends on the season of life and you learn from it of what you actually need, right? It took me a while to realize that, man, I really need to have my headphones right there, or else I just get so pissed off if I can't find my headphones. All right, so that's rituals. Any questions about rituals, by the way? That might be super straightforward, but I mean, I read it, I think, from a guy, Michael Hyatt, who I follow. And man, it really just changed my life to be prepared at all points in time whenever I'm actually ready to do like the most important stuff that matters. All right, take another sip of wine. Next question.
I knew this all sounded familiar. I'm literally taking notes right now in a Michael Hyatt full focus planner.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, not everything I've done is straight from him, but it's great. Yeah, his tips are super easy, practical framework for doing stuff. Yeah, him and James Clear, right? Atomic Habits. It was a big one for me too. All right, 4 steps for achieving focus. We are down 3 of them. We got 1 more left. Strategies for staying focused. All right, so remember we talked in the beginning about intention minus distraction equals focus. And so I want to dive a little bit more into that intention piece, right? And as I said before, it only counts as focus if it's what you are intending to do. All right, so we've got to figure out what it is that you're intending to do. Now we're going to get practical and talk about some coding stuff here to try and bring it a little bit home more to where you're at right now instead of just talking about me like running and reading and stuff. All right, so this guy named Nir Eyal, he's the author of a book called Indistractable. And he says, being indistractable, which I don't think it's a word, but that's fine, means striving to do what you say you'll do. Okay, so let's do that. What gets measured gets done. That's another nice one of these sayings. It's probably at the top of your Michael Hyatt journal. He has these pithy quotes as well. So we want to be able to actually assess how we're progressing. I think that was the question the question that one of y'all had a minute ago about how do I get back on schedule. And well, it has to do with assessing, right? If you're never assessing how you're doing, you don't know how to make adjustments going forward. So for example, if a vacation derails you, that's something we want to be assessing for and figure out, okay, why did the vacation derail me? And how can I make small changes so that next time I'm prepared for this, right? So maybe that means, for example, before you even leave for the vacation, you plan for the time that when you get back, like what is you're going to work on when you get back. For me, that's what I have to do. I plan my week on Friday afternoons because I know that when I get into the office on Monday morning, I sit down, there's so much tension that has been resolved by just having all that prepared already. All right, so we're gonna measure some things. The strategy here will be one, to set large goals, right? So again, these large goals are, I'm going to become a software engineer. I'm going to become financially independent, whatever it is. Set huge goals. We're going to break those large goals down into buckets of time. So smaller goals, right? Obviously, because we want them to be actually attainable. And then we're going to measure our progress in intervals. All right. So we're going to do this in a little framework where we're going to look at these different time buckets of our life. So starting off with the next 10 years. Now, this is, if you could roll your eyes at this, you say, what's your 5-year plan? I'm not saying that, I'm saying what's your 10-year plan. So we're going to look at what do we want to get done in the next 10 years, right? So coding, by the way, should somehow be connected to something you want to accomplish in the next 10 years. If it's not, then you may not be worth your time. The next 5 years, the next 3 years, the next year, the next 3 months, this week, today, and then 25 minutes, right? So going back to what I said in the beginning, 10-year goals, right, are accomplished 25 minutes at a time. So if you want to accomplish something big, you have to be able to focus on these little small increments. So I actually have a method by which I track all of these things, and I review all of these things, and I make adjustments as I go. Because again, you're not going to be perfect at doing any of what we're talking about in the beginning. You really have to become a student of focus, right? You have to be able to slowly over time carve out your own framework and figure out what works for you in your life and what doesn't, and to make small changes as you go. So for that, we're going to look at, let's just kind of make up some hypothetical goals here. The next 10 years. All right, we're going to become financially independent. That means 10 years from now, you could stop working and you'd be good. So that's a big 10-year goal. 5 years from now, let's say that we just have to work 20 hours a week. Maybe that's going to be our 5-year goal. And 5 years from now, I'm just going to work 20 hours a week and do nothing else. 3 years from now, let's say you're going to start a software consultancy, right? So your own business in which you're building custom software for either as a freelancer, for startups, for bigger companies, whatever, your own software consultancy. Next year, let's say you're going to land your first coding job at all. Now you might be thinking 3 years of experience starting my own software consultancy. You're actually going to learn a ton in 3 years on the job. So land your first coding job. The next 3 months, maybe you got to learn JavaScript first before you can land a coding job. This week, maybe you just have to learn about JavaScript functions. And then today, maybe you're learning specifically about arrow functions, right, which were a new feature in 2015. And then the next 25 minutes, you're going to complete the Codecademy, which is a website that teaches coding, right? You're going to complete the Codecademy functions module. You're working on it for a while. So the next 25 minutes, you're going to complete that one module, right? This is an example of how these bigger goals would obviously boil down into something that you need to do in the next 25 minutes. Now, maybe you're not quite to, I don't know what your 10, 5, 3-year goals are. Maybe it has nothing to do with financial independence and working in software consultancy or whatever. Mine aren't those things, by the way. But maybe it's the next year, right? That you want by next year to land your first coding job. And you're probably going to look something like this for what you actually are going to be setting as your goals. Right. So actually how to do this looks like the following. So at the top I have, and this is kind of a bonus. This isn't really having to do with what we're talking about necessarily, but I think it's helpful to connect what I'm doing today with the bigger picture of my life, right? The story that my life is telling. And that might sound really deep to you, but if you can iron out those kinds of things, it's going to be especially helpful in the job search when you can actually articulate who you are and what it is that you're doing or what it is that you want out of coding. And especially if you can connect it to something that's much bigger in your life. So what I do, by the way, I'm almost done here. This is the last step, right? So I list out all of my accounts. So for me, I'm thinking about spiritual, marriage, kids, family, health, friends, career, and then finances, right? Those are all my accounts, right? Any given point in time, I can invest in one of those things or I can withdraw from one of those things, right? I might just need my friends to pick me up because I'm feeling depressed, right? That's withdrawing. And I can only do that if I've invested well in good friends. But I only have so much time, 168 hours a week. So at different points in time, I might be investing in one of these more than another, right? So right now, if you're listening to me talk about this, you're probably wanting to invest in this career field, which might give you more time to invest in your friends. It might make you more money that helps with your finances and your health, and ultimately with your family and your marriage and everything else as well. So those are my accounts. Once I get those accounts, I then look at how I want. So, for spiritual, might be God, my wife, my kids and family, my friends, my colleagues, to remember me, right? How do I want to be remembered? Like, what do I want them to say about me? Not because I care about their opinions, but it will be telling of what is true of me by what it is that they might say of me. So, this might be morbid, but you can kind of not write your obituary, but write a little bit about like what is it you want to be said about you if you weren't around, kind of thing. And then from there, I do some annual planning, right? So every year, I kind of have a time. And I like to do it actually in the calendar year. So December, before the new year comes, where I set like these big goals, usually 10 to 12 annual goals. And they might be something like, a savings goal for saving money, or it might be a fitness goal for like, run a 6-minute mile. That hasn't been one of mine, but I'm just trying to think of examples. Read 12 books, whatever those big goals are. Yours might be land a job as a software engineer. So I set some SMART goals. Again, look up SMART. I'm not going to go over it right now. It's an acronym. So one example is, max out my Roth IRA by June 30th, 2021. That would be a more specific goal than save money, right? Okay. And then quarterly planning. So every quarter, I want to look back at my annual goals and assess, okay, what do I need to do in these next 3 months to help me achieve this 1 year goal? Now, of course, I gave you the example earlier about maybe it's learn JavaScript. Over these next 3 months, I'm going to get really freaking good at JavaScript. Then I'm going to reassess where I need to be for the next 3 months. And then this is where I think all the magic happens, is weekly planning. And Andrew, to your point about Michael Hyatt, this is straight from his planner, right? He has this idea of every week you should take some time and plan your week out. I'm very involved. Like, this is like the most important time of my week. That's Friday afternoon. I'm planning the following week. I have sort of a checklist that I go through of all the things I need to do. I need to look at my calendar. I look at my all my email inbox. I look at to-do lists, etc. And I think about what are the big 3 things I need to either get done or work on this next week, right? To-do lists can be difficult because you're not always able to complete everything on your to-do list. And the to-do list is it's mostly about you getting a little bit of dopamine from checking the box, right? So your weekly big 3 helps you think about, well, everything else aside, because a lot of what I do during the day doesn't move the needle, right? If I'm honest, by the way, and you're probably like this too, I think there's probably 2 hours a day that actually move the needle for me, right? In terms of work. And the same is going to be true for you of anything else in your life, probably. So having a big 3 really help you narrow what it is you're focusing on. And hopefully coding is going to be involved in one of those big 3 things. From there, I have daily planning, right? So the end of each day, so I have an alarm on my phone, 4:45, I plan out my next day. And I think about what are the big 3 things that I want to focus on, right? I might have a to-do list of 15 items, but what are the 3 things that are actually going to matter? Because if I drop the ball on the other 3, someone might be mad at me, but it's not going to be a deal breaker. But if I don't accomplish these huge things that are related to my big annual goals, that's part of the plan for my life, then what am I doing? Right? If coding is part of what you want to do with your life, or at least the next step in your career, and your week got washed away by, I don't know, like paying bills or responding to email. What is that, right? You've got to figure out a way to make sure that you can capitalize on these big 3, even at a daily level. And then this is where things get important for staying focused. 25 minutes. So I use what's called the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. man, it helped me so much years ago. The idea is you can take your day, if you want to get real hardcore about it, and break down all the tasks you have to do into 25-minute chunks. Now, I don't do that, but what I do is anytime I sit down to focus on something, I set a 25-minute timer. And for those 25 minutes, I can't do anything but focus on what it is I'm working on. I can't use the bathroom. I'm not checking email. I'm not looking at my phone. In fact, I put my phone on the other side of the room. I'm not checking Twitter. I'm not doing anything but focusing on what it is I need to focus on. And I remember the first time I did this, I was just floored by how hard it was to get to 25 minutes. I was like, oh my God, this feels like an eternity. Are you telling me that I can't sit down and look at my computer for 25 minutes without feeling like I need to like check something else or look at a notification? And probably it's true. So after those 25 minutes are up, the timer goes off, you take a break. Usually you set a 5-minute timer for your break timer. During those 5 minutes, do whatever you want to do, right? Watch a YouTube video, search the internet, go for a walk, get a snack, whatever it is you want to do for 5 minutes. That timer goes off and set another 25-minute timer, right? So this means you could probably do 2 Pomodoros in an hour. I mean, you can change the times also if you want to do 20 and 10 or 30 and 5, whatever it is. But I like to do 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break because I know that I can do basically 2 Pomodoros in an hour. So I can break up my day into Pomodoros. And to be honest with you, on a good day, I probably get between 6 and 8 Pomodoros done a day, which means 3 to 4 hours of focused work, which sounds crazy, but honestly, focused work it's a different level of work than just the kind of stuff that you would do with, I don't know, a podcast running or something like that. So, but coding really does require this type of work. And I've had seasons in my life where, building the curriculum for Project Shift, for example, I remember I had these massive Pomodoro goals. And my goal was, okay, I'm just going to get, 15 Pomodoros done today. That's my goal. And I'm going to do whatever it takes if I have to stay up late or whatnot to do it. And so you might be at a point like that at some point in your life as well. So I'll have to say, these 25 minutes have ultimately bubbled it up to my daily big 3, my weekly big 3, my quarterly goals, my annual goals, and then my life plan for where I actually want to be eventually.